Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the channel. My name's Jared. Today we're going to be doing some work on my 180SX. We have a new catch can set up that we're going to throw on. These are all the parts here which we're going to be using today to install this catch can. This is a rocker cover which I purchased off my friend Harrison. And this was the one he had on his car in the video, if you've seen that. And this was the first one he had on. As you can see, it's been modified. It's got a -10 weld-on fitting here and here, which replaced the original pressed-in one, and this one has a threaded insert. He also had it wrinkle blacked as well, and this was the catch can which he was running with it. I just got a fitting sitting on there at the moment, but it's got 3 inlets and then a breather where that was on there before. And he had 2 lines which are already made up for these 2 to go to the catch can. But on top of that, I've went and just bought a bunch of max peating rods fittings which came with 6 meters of this braided hose. It cost me about $85 for all those fittings and the hose. I don't mind using the cheaper fittings for this type of job because it's not high pressure, it just needs to move the gases. You can buy this braided hose, which is cheaper, and that's fine as well. And that was about $50 for the same thing. I just specifically chose this braided hose so it matched the existing ones, and also the stainless and black look would match in. So why do you want to install a catch can? Well, there's 2 main reasons. The first one is that the oil vapors which come from the crankcase due to excess pressure making it past the rings, that oil can coat the intake piping as well as your intake manifold. That can block passages and create restrictions that can affect how the car runs and also make it dirty. The second part too is that the oil in the air that goes into your engine lowers the octane in the cylinder, because the oil has a lower octane rating than the fuel. So it takes up space instead of oxygen or fuel, and you make less power. When you install a bigger turbo or you increase the boost pressure, the cylinder pressure increases and more gases make it past the rings, which means you have more volume than going out of the rocker cover in this case to the catch can. So we need a bigger catch can to catch all that oil, to raise the octane rating in the cylinder, as well as reduce the oil coating everything in the intake. So this is what I got at the moment. So I've got this GK Tech catch can that sits over the radiator shroud, which looks nice, but in all honesty, from my experience, it doesn't actually do a lot of catching. It just kind of looks nice there. And if you don't have the fan shroud, then you can't really run it as well. If you have a stock car, probably you might have a little breather box there. So that line comes up to the breather box, then tees into here, and then from here goes to your intake or your original air box. In my case, it goes to this catch can and then back to the intake. And then on the other side from factory, you have a PCV valve, which is a one-way valve that allows the vacuum from the intake to draw the vapors out of the rocker cover, but then under boost it's blocked off. And you can see it comes to this T fitting here, which goes into the top of the intake. So essentially we're going to delete this. We're going to switch the new rocker cover on. Going to need to remove those 2 hoses which go to the intake manifold and cap them off, or alternatively you leave it in and you cap this off. And then we're going to install the new catch can here, but we're going to need to remove this factory boost controller and also relocate this box, which I believe is responsible for the wiper motor. So I've had this catch can on the car for probably nearly 5,000 kilometers, sitting up like this. So you would assume it's probably full of liquid, right? But if I tip it out, there's not a single drop that's been caught in this catch can. It's pretty much just for looks. So now we got the catch can off, the hoses, the one going to the intake here, which we're going to need to cap off, and the hose on both sides of these fittings, and the one down the bottom there for the breather. So next we're going to go ahead and remove this hose attached to the PCV valve. And then the last couple things we need to do in my case is remove this, attach to the rocker cover, remove this cable tie which is also attached, and this bracket here, and I believe there's no more brackets in the way for me removing this. We're going to go ahead and remove this cover, and we'll need to take off the coil packs. So we're ready now to remove the rocker cover. We've got everything exposed. I'm just going to go ahead and move this up because I don't know if we're going to have enough height to lift this and bring it out. Now I can just go around and take off all these 10 mils. Now you might need to use a screwdriver to lever it up like that. When you lift off the rocker cover, make sure you don't lose these because it's very easy to drop it in the engine. And again, I think it's been a few years since I've had this open, but for an original engine, like, it is very clean inside there. Like, it doesn't have that heavy oxidization that you would expect for a car this old. So I ended up taking the gasket off because I couldn't get it to go into the rocker cover, and I cleaned up the sealant here as well. Then I put the gasket back on the new one. Don't forget the middle one here. And I'm reusing this one. We need to make sure that we have the sealant in the corners because it always leaks through the corners of the gasket. And make sure you do that on both sides and smooth it out a little bit before we install it. New rocker cover is on. I didn't film it just because it's the reverse of taking it off, and also it just pretty much looks exactly how it looks before, besides those 2AN fittings on. So next I guess we can put the tank in, but we're going to need to remove this boost control solenoid. So as you can see, it's plugged in on my car, but the two fittings here actually don't go anywhere. So I think normally this goes to the intake manifold or the charcoal canister and then to the wastegate. But I mean, most people aren't going to have the factory computer still hooked up. In my case, I've got a boost T here, or you might have electronic boost controller. So it's just redundant there at the moment. And then we might also need to move this wiring harness because I think we need to use this hole with the plug there to mount it. And then, like I said before, we're going to have to move this box. I believe we can move it into the fender on the other side here. My car did have an earth that went behind that, so we're going to need to make sure we put that back in when we install the catch can. I just unplugged that, moved the wiring harness out. Now I'm just going to test fit the catch can. Looks like this can that Harry had got made up was after he deleted his aircon, because you can see there the bottom of the catch can hitting it. So I think I can make it work, but I'm going to need to fabricate some sort of bracket maybe from this mount that goes down underneath, something like that. So a little update, you can see here I've just made a little aluminium L bracket that attaches to this bolt hole and goes down to that there, just with a nut on the other side of it. The other thing to note too is this hole where this bolts into, there's no thread on it. There's no thread on that hole. The other one in there has a thread, that one doesn't. So what I'm thinking is we'll just put the bolt through there and then use the thread on the other side to mount that little plastic box module. This line at the back there with the 180 and the 45 on here, that already came from Harry with his setup. The other one he had didn't work. So this was the spool. I already installed one fitting on the end. And now I'm just going to show you how to assemble the other end and mark and cut. So you want to put the fitting on the end where you want it to go and then take off the olive and the nut, because we're going to measure where we're going to cut up to this flange here, because the hose is actually going to sit against this part. So you want to get the hose and that fitting in the orientation where you want it to sit, and then you're going to line it up against that butt and make your mark with a texter. You can just go ahead and cut this, but it might end up frayed. As you can see here how they've taped it, that'll stop the end from fraying. So I just gone ahead and put the tape right over where the line is, so I'm going to cut it in the middle. You don't want to cut it on the side of the tape because it won't do anything. You want to cut through the middle. I just use some electrical tape because I find I can get it quite tight on the wraps. And ideally you want to use the thinnest blade you can, because it puts the least amount of heat into the hose and causes the least amount of fraying. So after you cut it, it should look something like this. And see how it's not frayed? Then you can go ahead and remove the remaining bit of tape. You can see a slight bit of separation from the tube and the outer stainless. So then you get your hose end, which you want to kind of twist it on. Don't push it on because you don't want to fray it out too much. Then you get this crush olive, which it goes in the middle of the stainless and the plastic. Like this, and then you can bang it against something. And then you want to have that stainless edge against that flat part. And next we're going to do some assembling. I suggest put a bit of lubricant, just WD-40, and then you also put a bit on the other end and the threads as well, makes it a bit easier. And then that's going to go inside like that until it gets to the bottom, and then we can thread this up and just get it started like that, and then put in the vise. So now that's in the vise, we got the nut clamped up. I got this little AN wrench to do this up, so we're going to go ahead and tighten the top one into that hose as such. And there we go. You might have a slight gap just between here. The more you do it up, the closer that gap's going to be. And then again, you just want to make sure that everything's good. One final thing before you put this on your car, it's probably not going to matter too much in this case, but you want to blow or wash the hose out, because when we cut it, it's introduced some contaminants into the hose. There you can see our line we just made, the 90-degree bend one. Next we're going to delete this pipe that's connected to the old PCV valve. Since we've deleted it, we no longer need it, as it's making the engine look messy. So now you're left with this fitting, that fitting there, that we need to cap. Later we're going to get rid of this fuel line anyway and tidy this up when we change the fuel rail. So this is like the vacuum cap that you're going to use. You could use a coolant one as well. And it pushes on like that. And you can just put a cable tie around it or a hose clamp. You just push it on like so, because you're going to have quite a bit of pressure in the intake manifold that it will pop that cap off if you just push it on. If you have a naturally aspirated car, then shouldn't be a problem. Your other option with this is you leave it on the car, you just take this hose off that used to go to the rocker cover, and you put the single cap on this and you leave the two on there. For the last line from the crankcase breather, we're going to need to use some push lock hose because the steel braided line won't fit over that fitting. So what I have here is 1 meter of -10 push lock hose, and this one is E85 rated. You don't want to use a radiator hose for this. Then I also have a push lock -10 straight fitting, and that's the part number if you're wondering. And I got some heat sleeving as well to protect this hose, as it can be close to the exhaust manifold. This one assembles very similar to the AN fitting, but we can pretty much just push it in. Again, just a bit of lubricant on the fitting. There you go, that is on. For higher pressures you do need to use a hose clamp on that end, but for us we don't need to. So next I'm just going to measure this up and cut it. Got that marked. Just going to make our cut. Then before we install it, you're going to throw on some of this heat sleeve, which was not cheap, but it's $25 a meter, so it's about the same price as the hose, but it's going to stop a potential fire. There's that bottom line with the heat sleeve on and tightened up. And also I went ahead and threw on some hose clamps, which were actually for fuel line, because they were the only ones small enough I had for those vacuum caps. Last thing we need to do is sort out the bolt to hold on that end of the catch can, and also reposition the module for the wiper motor inside the fender, which is going to involve jacking the car up, taking the wheel off, taking the liner off. Just an update, what I've done is I've put a riv nut on that bracket so it can come off easy, and in that corner I've added a riv nut as well, because I wasn't able to get behind here without having to remove the whole fender. And then inside there we've just got that control box for the wipers plugged in and cable tied to that main harness, which is going to sit behind the splash guard. For the intake, we need to cap it off. So what I've bought is this 5/8 water cap from Autobahn. Just where I'm shining my torch, you can see that rubber cap on the intake pipe, because now we don't have the catch can going back to the intake, we need to cap it off. If this video was helpful, please leave a comment down below or give me a thumbs up, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.